Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jasmine. Today, the topic of my speech is Love Beyond Boundaries. Last night, I turned on the yellowish lamp in my lamp to let the yellowish light flow silently in my bedroom. It meant time for bed, but I kept tossing around, ruffling a quiet and brown-eyed. Somehow, I was kept awake by a Japanese documentary named Coming Out, a cry from Chinese LGBTQ group. I stumbled upon this documentary during an online searching. Amid much gossip about film stars, that title immediately caught my eye. I gazed at it for several seconds, then clicked the watch button at last. I did not take its content seriously. It was merely a sense of curiosity that drove me into this heavy topic. As a regular netizen, I encountered news concerning LGBTQ group very often, but hardly had I paid close attention to what those 5 initials really meant to our society. Until now, I still remember the shock I felt staring at the blank computer screen when the documentary finished playing. It recorded 3 families' dilemmas when the children came out. One of them could not get her mother's support after 14 years and enlisting treaties. One of them finally expressed himself after his mother died. One of them did get his parents' blessing, yet he had long suffered from neighbors' rumors and disgust. It was a kind of world that I was not directly involved in. In the documentary, one mother shouted at her daughter desperately and asked her why she wanted to become a lesbian. That sentence sounded like absurd nonsense because being part of the LGBTQ group is never a choice. It is a submission to their true heart and uncontrollable burst of emotions in their life. Quite contrary to my own belief, though, many Chinese are not able to put up with LGBT. According to the mainstream perspective, their love is unacceptable in society. It is considered not only as a shame to most families, but also a taboo in daily conversations. As a matter of fact, I often come across gay or lesbian couples in Western TV shows, movies, novels, and songs. In these various media, I often see a pattern in which Western culture is gradually breeding a more acceptable and tolerant attitude towards the LGBTQ group. Since 1990, when the World Health Organization moved homosexuality away from its mental disorders series, organizations and medical authorities have made continuous effort to ensure LGBTQ groups' basic human rights to attain happiness. While the phenomenon of homophobia is still entrenched in some of the conventions and laws, it is undeniable that homosexuality gradually works its way out in getting public attention and support. One of the most famous examples is the celebration of Gay Pride. Being held on the last Sunday of every June, it becomes an occasion for LGBTQ groups to freely express themselves and a haven for them to re-establish and affirm their identities. When I accidentally came across an online video several months ago about a demonstration on Gay Pride, I found that American culture has started to regard people from LGBTQ group as humans sharing the same rights as others. I leaned on the back of my chair, closed my laptop, and sat there deep in contemplation. I suddenly realized that I had never discussed this topic with my parents. Now that I recalled what LGBTQ meant in Western culture, I was especially interested in their response to this topic. So on the next day, I chatted with them after dinner and simply asked for their positions regarding LGBTQ issue. My parents were at first a little puzzled. Putting their things aside, they exchanged glances with a trace of doubt. When I insisted on getting an answer, my mother told me a personal story of hers when she was having a short stay at the University of Manchester in 2012. One day, she unintentionally went into a street lined with homosexual bars with her friends. While she was considering taking a closer look, her friends refused at once, claiming that homosexuality was not to be mingled with their normal lives. When she finished her story, I became even more perplexed concerning the collision between the two cultures. On one hand, I got used to homosexual scenes in TV series, but on the other, I kept encountering conventional values in my own culture which contradicted with my established belief. As a student in international school, I'm always told to learn and respect other cultural values. On a Friday, after that talk with my parents, one of my fellow students brought up the famous concept of platonic love in our politics class. While he showed it on the PPT, I pictured in my mind a scene with a happy couple holding hands. Before we start to explain it further, we regarded it as an ideal relationship between man and women in love, a pure spiritual state instead of sexual desires. It was a well-known topic among us, yet the idea of homosexuality had never occurred to us before. As he explained the original meaning of platonic love in ancient Athens, I heard continuous chit-chatting from every corner of the classroom. It was then that I placed the popular meaning of platonic love with its original one and considered the difference between them two. The reason behind that variation I cannot tell clearly, but I think it may be credited to the distinctions in the two cultures' attitudes towards the LGBTQ group. I was not much surprised or uneasy as I thought I would be. In the middle of a heated class discussion, I only perceived confusion for what is left to do when facing these distinctions in the future. The question then is, in what way can you and I as students take one step further? This urged me to ponder over the differences between Chinese and Western cultures that brought forth the distinctive attitudes towards the LGBTQ group. Personally, I think one main reason behind the collision is that the Chinese tend to emphasize collectivism while Westerners individualism. Our mainstream value teaches us that the best thing to do is to follow suit. Most of the times, running with the crowd is a law of survival. On the contrary, Western culture embraces the idea of individualism, granting individuals enough freedom to choose their own way of life. As human rights have gradually gained more weight, the calls from the LGBTQ group are more easily heard by the public. Furthermore, this distinction is also showcased in the different attitudes of the older, poor and remote areas and the more advanced regions towards the LGBTQ group. In both cases, the former seems to hold a more hostile attitude towards people from LGBTQ group. Through my talks with my elders, I found that antipathy towards LGBTQ is ingrained in the older Chinese generation. On the contrary, some of my peers feel it's easier to accept that relationship, probably due to the education we have received and our broader horizon. Yet I cannot deny the fact that some young people in China still feel it is even disgusting to mention it. The different attitudes towards people from LGBTQ is just one example of the many cultural collisions we have encountered. The documentary that I discussed with you at the beginning prompted me to dig deeper into the history and development of the LGBTQ group and its influence on society. The unequal treatment underrepresented people suffer is forever an issue until our society has worked out a solution. Right now, as I'm standing here, I reflect on myself as being somewhat ignorant to the conflicting views of homosexuality. During the investigation process, I gradually became more aware of the social phenomena around us. I started to view it from different perspectives, and I hope that all of you will join me by taking the perspective from our own culture as well as the one from another culture, which urges us to take a holistic stance when we ponder over an issue in the future. Thank you.